Welcome back to Commissioner's Corner, our weekly show where we're diving into big topics around the county. And I am so excited today to have my first guest, someone I've gotten to know very well over the last several years, someone who is passionate about this community and helping inform people. And my special guest today is Kayla Blakeslee. So welcome.
Hi, Ron. This is so crazy for me to be on this other side of the microphone. I don't know how I feel about it yet, not being the one in control.
I think it's fabulous. So one of the things that I want to start each show off with is really talking with people about their story. And so as you look at people's lives, we never really get a chance to tell our story about us and how we got to where we're at today. And so can you share just in a few quick minutes some of your highlights from your story for us?
Yeah, my story, it's really not that exciting. I'm one of the few, I suppose this part is exciting. I'm one of the few that knew from a very young age what I wanted to do. I am the exception. I am not the rule, right? I knew in 6th grade that I wanted to tell people's stories. That's always been my heartbeat. And you can blame a young mentor that I had back in the day. Her name was Amanda Post. Her name is still Amanda Post, still a mentor of mine. But she taught our 6th grade advanced English class, but was also an evening anchor on our local news station. And in 6th grade, she read to our classroom. Now, mind you, we're cool kids. We're in 6th grade, right? She read to us out of a book it was called Holes, one of my favorite books this day. And she had the whole room captivated because of the way she was telling this story. And I remember right then and there that I wanted to tell people's stories. And Ron, I know you know me well enough. I've got a voice to do that. And I believe that's one of the talents that God has blessed me with, this fearless ability to talk.
You are fearless, yes.
To say things that other people maybe won't say and don't feel like they can say. And so that's really what led me down this road. I went to school. I went to Penn State and studied broadcast journalism, minored in political science. Swore off radio my junior year, said I would never do radio because I strictly wanted to do TV. I did a stint at the Big Ten Network, a very short stint, and realized very quickly I did not want to do TV. And so here we are. I landed in radio, never looked back, and have never even thought about going somewhere else.
So you do a daily show, Monday through Friday. And so I think a lot of people have no idea what goes into the preparation work for a daily show. Walk us through a normal day for Kayla. What does it look like?
The prep never stops. That's what it is. I always say it's a hazard to be my friend and to be in my circle. So fair warning, Commissioner, because everything around me is prep. It's constant. I'm constantly reading. I'm constantly researching. I'm constantly thinking. And truly, my producer and I say it all the time, we don't actually know how to turn it off. I'd say that's one of the biggest struggles of my job is being able to turn it off. But I also think that's a good thing and hopefully what makes me good at my job. The trick is for prep, taking all of that, right, and sharing it, making it make sense, first of all, at 5 a.m. in the morning, and sharing it with listeners in a way that connects and resonates. And in my case, in 4 or 5 minute increments. That's the real trick to the prep. There's content around us all the time, right? That's almost the easy part. It's what resonates with listeners and what is going to connect with listeners at 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. And that's where it can get a little tricky. So to me, it's more just figuring out what's impacting our listeners, what they care about, why do they care about it, and how can we share and tell that story.
So what is your favorite, most enjoyable part of this job?
Oh, the connection with listeners, 100%. People ask me that question actually all the time, and that's always my go-to answer. But it's true. I love the connections I have with members of this community. I have had the privilege of meeting so many incredible people that I feel like, if I worked at the local grocery store or a bank, that I probably wouldn't have those interactions. I have women come up to me and cry and share their stories. I have farmers come up to me and pat me on the back and say thank you. It's just these incredible connections with people that, I'll be honest, when I got into this industry, I didn't anticipate having. And it's truly my favorite part of the job.
Our jobs are fairly similar in that we're both in people business.
Yeah.
And so I look at one of my jobs is to know what's going on in my community. And I think I've told you this before that I did over 200 meet and greets last year. Everything from having people come to my office to me going out in the community. And this summer, we're going to do a road show throughout Allen County. Because of that, I love meeting and talking to people. How is what we do impacting your life? So I think that's what got us connected so well, is that we love hearing people's stories and sharing that.
Yeah, we do. We share that heartbeat. But I also think that's what makes you a great commissioner. I like to think that's what makes me good at the role that I do as well, because our heartbeat truly is to serve the community and share their stories. That's essentially what you do on a regular basis as well.
So what is the least enjoyable part of the job?
The least and
you can't say producer
working
Josh.
With my producer, yeah, I was just going to say that. Who's sitting in the room
he's awesome,
right now?
yeah.
No, he's the best. That's a really good question. I love my job. I love everything about it. I'd say the least enjoyable, and it's not even that it's not enjoyable, it's just the responsibility that comes with it. And again, maybe you can relate to that as well. I'd say that's the hardest part. Again, you go to school, you major in broadcast, right? And you learn to tell the facts and to be fair. And if you give this person 15 seconds, you got to give that person 15 seconds, right? But they don't ever teach you, and I never anticipated the responsibility that would come with this role.
Yep.
And that can be hard. It becomes personal. Things become very personal. And so I think to me, that's the hardest part of the job, is balancing when it becomes personal and just almost not forgetting that responsibility. I don't ever want to take this role for granted. I don't ever want to take this microphone for granted. And so just the responsibility of being the voice for a lot of individuals who feel like they can't share theirs, that's heavy. So again, it's not that it's not enjoyable, but it's probably the hardest part of the job.
No, and that's fair. And that's one of the things about this show. You will not hear me interview candidates for office. This show, I wanted to be informational and not political. And yes,
good for you.
I'm an elected official. However, because it's that fairness piece, right? If I have one candidate for office on, I need to have another candidate. And so staying out of that realm. And so generally, if you're running for office in a cycle, this would not be the show for you, because that's not where I want to go. It is informing people and having that community dialogue.
But at the end of the day, I feel like that's a big part of your role as a commissioner, right? Your job isn't to tell people how or what to think. Your job is just to get people to think, right? On both sides of the aisle.
And with that, we will take our first break. You're listening to Commissioner's Corner. Welcome back to Commissioner's Corner. I'm Ron Turpin, and I am here with my special guest for our inaugural episode, Kayla Blakeslee. So, Kayla, welcome back.
Yeah, it feels so weird to sit on this side of the microphone, but how am I doing? Ron?
I feel powerful. This is awesome.
I don't like relinquishing that control. It's all yours today.
So we've been talking with you, Kayla, about some of the aspects of your job. What is the biggest story that you've covered in your time at WOWO?
Oh, that's easy, although it's probably not what people think. I think when people think big, they probably think on a national or even a global scale. But I think for me, the biggest story that I've ever shared or ever told on the air was the passing of Charlie Butcher. For folks who don't know it, Charlie sat in this chair before I did, hosting Fort Wayne's Morning News. And he hosted Fort Wayne's Morning News for 16 years prior to me doing it. Before that, he hosted on WMEE down the hall, one of our sister stations. He did a program with Tony Richard called Those Two Guys in the Morning. Those two guys. So he was with Federated Media. Yeah, right. Very creative. But you know what? It worked, right?
Right.
Charlie was a creative genius. So he was with Federated Media for over 30 years. And then, he suddenly had a heart attack. And I got that call from his son. And it was around 6 p.m. in the evening. I'd actually just got home from work. So I knew the next day what my job was going to be. And in fact, the job started right then and there.
And that had to be hard.
It was the hardest thing in my career I have done thus far. I don't want to relive that day, actually. I remember being so frozen. I don't think I've ever shared this story, actually. And there's only 2 other people on the planet that know this story. So here you go, Ron. When it happened, of course, I had to call his family and say, hey, this is a news story. Do I have your permission to text it out, share it online? I just wanted to get permission and let them know this was coming. And they did. They knew that. But I remember being so frozen. I was sitting at my kitchen table. I immediately called our general manager at the time. He came to my house because it was that big of a deal. And it was me, him, and my husband at our kitchen table. And at this point, it's like 7:30 p.m. And it was so frozen. My husband wrote the web story to go up online. And again, I don't think I've ever shared that. But that story is so big for me because Charlie was, yes, a mentor of mine professionally, but he was also very much a father figure to me. When I moved here, I transplanted here from Union City, Pennsylvania, a town of population less than 3,000. We have 1.5 stoplights still to this day. Right? That blinker counts, right? So he kind of took me under his wing, his whole family, his wife, his kids. I attended the brunches, family dinners. He really welcomed me into his home and into his personal space. So for me, yes, when Charlie died, I lost a mentor, but I also lost a father figure.
Sure.
And that's something that they can never teach you to have to report on and to share. The passing of someone whom you love so dearly, and it become a news story. And I think what was hard is, that story just didn't go away in the news cycle. Right. 24 hours later, that story carried on. And I'll never forget sitting in the office across from us, Ron, and I got a phone call too that someone said, "Hey, can you take a secure call from the White House?" And I was like, probably not. No, but I knew at the time it was Vice President Mike Pence.
Right.
I knew that's who it was. We did manage to get the phone call. But those calls kept coming. The gifts were sent constantly, the flowers. And it was one of those, it just didn't go away for a really long time. And even now that story still stays with me. So for me personally, that was the biggest story and probably will be the biggest story of my lifetime.
No, for sure. For sure.
Didn't expect that answer, did you, Ron?
No. But that's the great thing about this kind of format, right? Because, people hear you every day and they don't really know all the pieces of Kayla. Yeah. And so that's one of the goals of this program is to really help educate people and to learn something new. If people walk away from this hour and say, wow, I never knew that. Then we've achieved our goal.
Then you got a great show.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got great guests. It's easy, right?
Tell me more.
So every day you do your show and you have different segments. You have a number of recurring guests, on there. How much listener feedback do you get?
A lot. A lot of listener feedback, but I love it. At the end of the day, I learned a really valuable lesson early on in my life. And it's that people just want to have their voices heard and feel valued. My dad growing up, my dad made me read a plethora of books, probably by the time I was 16, one of which was by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I've read it several times since. If you haven't read it, y'all should read it. It's a great book. But I learned very early on in my life that that's truly the heartbeat of people, right? They just want to have their voices heard. And so and my producer can tell you this, I try to respond to every piece of listener feedback that we get.
Good and bad?
Good and bad. It doesn't always happen, but I do. I try so hard to respond to everybody. But again, I'm only one person, and I do have to host a 4-hour program 5 days a week. So there's not always, that many hours in the day, but we get a lot. And I really appreciate it. The good, the bad, the ugly. And I take it to heart because of what I just said. At the end of the day, people just want to have their voices heard. What
do you see as the biggest issue before us right now?
Oh, affordability, right? And I'm sure you would agree with that. And I think from affordability, everything funnels down from that, whether it's housing, groceries, gas, utilities. Those are all the big issues right now, but they all funnel back into affordability.
Right, absolutely. So we have your media. Right. We have a lot of local media. Do you think our media is as proactive in reporting stories as they should be?
That's a great question. I feel like there's a lot of really great work being done. I feel like we have a really small pool of incredibly talented reporters and anchors. However, I'm a firm believer in we can always go harder. We can always do more. In fact, Charlie, as I was talking about there, he had this great saying. He actually asked me one day, he said, "Hey, Kayla, what happens to water when it hits 212 degrees?" And I was like, I think boils, right? Like, I don't know. It was kind of a strange question. He's like, what would happen if every day in your faith, in your family, and at work, you push for one more degree? You go from stagnant hot water at 211, right? But to a rapid boil at 212. So I live my life that way. And I feel like some in the local media should maybe pick up that mantra as well, that yeah, you're doing great. You got hot water, but we can always give it one more degree and really strive to boil over.
Right.
And I'm not saying I do every day, but I certainly just strive for that every day.
No, I resonate with that.
Yeah.
The strive for excellence is something I do not see a lot of, and just in a variety of things. I know when I look at government, a lot of, because I didn't come from government, I came from the private sector, and there are many committed people that do great work every day. And there are some people that are mailing it home, and it drives me crazy because I'm like, you know what? It is a privilege to serve the citizens.
Amen.
And how do we every day give our best to give them the service they deserve?
I say that all the time. I've said that throughout my career here at Federated Media. A lot of younger people will come through the door, and they've got such great raw talent and potential. And I'm like, come on, just put your pedal to the metal, you know? Like, I'm frustrated for them sometimes because if they would just go that extra degree, that, you know,
That's right.
that they could really knock it out of the park. But, you know, sometimes that just doesn't happen. And that's okay.
Yep.
They're not here anymore.
That's right.
That's pretty much what happens.
There you go. That's
you know?
right. And with that, we will take our next break. You're listening to Commissioner's Corner. Welcome back to Commissioner's Corner, and I'm with my special guest today, Kayla Blakeslee. I've heard before when I first started doing the radio show with you every week, I had some people tell me, oh, don't waste your time with that because there's not that many listeners. How many listeners do you have on an average day?
That's great. I don't have the average day breakdown, but every week we average about 100,000 listeners. That's
just
listeners,
a few.
Yeah, but that's listeners. Now, mind you, too, either on 1190 AM or 92.3 FM. That does not count our stream. Our online streaming is incredibly powerful. We average about 400,000 listeners a month on that stream. And the way Nielsen ratings work, I should just say in general, the stream isn't counted per se because sometimes Spotify doesn't let you have that data, or iHeart, right? It gets a little complicated, can get a little in the weeds. So technically, if you want to count the stream in there, Ron, you know, we've got just a few.
There's not a week that goes by that I don't get a text from someone or I'll see someone at church or somewhere else in the community and they're like, hey, I heard your segment, and ask a question.
So you're
about
getting feedback
something.
too.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it tells me that there are a ton of people out there that are listening every morning. So switching it up a little bit, you talked about Charlie being a mentor. You know, when you look at from a professional and personal perspective, who are some of your mentors or kind of a key mentor of yours?
I love this question because I think a lot of people would think, you know, your professional mentor and your personal mentor, right, are probably two different people. I would think for most people they are. I'm fortunate enough to have that person be the same person, and it's my husband. Going back to what you said earlier during the last break of maybe someone will learn something about you they didn't know. What a lot of people don't know about me is I met my husband here under this roof, Ron. He worked right down the hallway. Back then, for y'all who have been around a long time, and maybe if you listen to 98.9 The Bear, my husband was Stiller. That's what he went by on the air. His name's Marty. But I met Stiller here. I met him here, and he was a very big mentor of mine, truly, strictly professional when we first met each other. And he ran sports talk, so he also had this talk radio knowledge. And I remember the first time I really sat down and we were kind of comparing and contrasting sports talk and news talk. I remember thinking, man, this guy it's in his DNA. Radio is in his DNA, and he loved it. And I remember thinking, I want to love it that much, that it's just a part of who I am. And to this day, he still loves radio. He's not technically in it anymore. He went over to digital. I always say he went to the dark side.
The dark side.
But he still, to this day, I'll say, hey, I need you to put your program director hat on. I need you to put your radio hat on. I need you to put your sales hat on. Or I'll say, hey, I need you to put your husband hat on. We are very good at kind of separating those roles sometimes when need be. But ultimately, he's the one who pushes me to 12 all the time. Yep. He's the one who keeps me grounded. He is my safe space. And I think I'm so fortunate to have that person be the same person.
No. And that's a great answer. Most people don't know. My wife and I met in law school. We're both attorneys. Yeah. And so I'm a tax lawyer by background. My wife's an employment lawyer. And, you know, it was one where we've been together. This will be our 30th anniversary this fall. So
congratulations.
But she is that person for me. Kathy is that one who's been the grounding when I have a big issue, I go to her and say, what would you do about X? So that answer resonates a lot with me, because I would say both for a professional, the success I've had in life, I wouldn't have if it wasn't for her.
Yeah, same without my husband. Is that what kind of attracted you two to each other at first? Was business essentially, law in that case?
It was funny. When I was in law school, I didn't have any intention of, going to find a spouse or anything. I was there to get a job done. I'm going to get my degree.
Same, I was here to work.
That's right, and make money. And so we had a mutual friend that we had a trial practice class where there were 3 people. And I was one of those. I know you're shocked that I was driven by perfection and getting high grades and all that. So I was driven to, take this class to the next level, and, got to meet her, and we started talking and dated, and, a year and a half later we got married. So,
and here you are going on 30 years.
It is.
That's
it is.
amazing.
It was funny when I had a job offer in Terre Haute, where I'm from originally, and she had one here from a small company called Brotherhood Mutual at the time. They had 120 employees. She went to work there. We had a choice. I had a job offer in Terre Haute. She had one here in Fort Wayne. We felt God calling us here, and we moved here. We thought we'd be here 2 years, and here we are 30 years later. And
isn't that funny?
She's still at Brotherhood after all these years. Wow. So, but no, I agree, on that.
Being able to have one that's professional.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So we spoke about faith, and I know you well enough to know how important your faith is to you. So if you're willing to share, what's God speaking to you about right now?
Well, first of all, you're right. My faith is everything.
Right.
It is my foundation. And what an intriguing question. I love that you brought it up, though. For me, what's been on my heart a lot, and this is for me personally, not so much necessarily the listener, maybe for the listener, but for me, I struggled in 2024. We all know it was an election year, right?
Right.
I think my producer and I both were like, I don't know how much more we can take. We came off COVID. This was a nasty election year.
I was campaigning that year, so believe
you were
me, I know.
And it was rough. And I just remember I mean, for 8 months, my prayers were just out of desperation, of God, is this the role you really want me in? Because I'm sure you can relate to this, Ron. It sometimes is hard not to pick the low-hanging fruit, okay? And I don't want to pick the low-hanging fruit. I don't, The good Lord did not put me in this chair to pick the low-hanging fruit. Let's put it this way. But boy, was I tempted in 2024. And at that moment, I was really nervous that I shouldn't even be in this business anymore if I was being that tempted to pick the fruit.
Right.
And so I was really feeling like I was lacking discernment and just kind of all over the place and just crying out to God, like, where do you want me? Do you still want me in this space? And so it became very clear to me, really, the beginning of 2025. I guess I'm a slow learner, slow prayer. I don't know. I was watching this movie, ironically, with my daughter on Netflix. And I don't even remember the name of the movie. It was kind of silly. I don't even recommend it. But in it, this young boy takes care of a lighthouse with his grandfather. Okay. And it was like God, parted the skies for me in this moment in this children's movie about this lighthouse. And how he made it very clear to me to stay in this role. This role is I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. To be the constant, to be the steady. Waves might be crashing, the wind is howling, storms are raging, but that lighthouse stays constant and firm, and is the light when needed most. And in this movie, the lighthouse is the center part of this whole film, and how not only do your ships need it, but those back on the island, it was based out of Ireland, by the way, they need this lighthouse. And so God kind of revealed this moment to me of this lighthouse. I know that might sound crazy, but I have been clinging to this lighthouse, vision, if you will, and prayer for really now the last about year and a half going on. What are we, March 2026, April now? So that's been it. Like, God, just keep me this constant then. If this is where you want me, I need you to keep me firm and to keep me shining your light and to not pick the low-hanging fruit, by golly. And I'm not perfect. I'll be the first to say that. I am not perfect, but I certainly strive to be that constant. No,
that's a great answer. That one resonates with me as well.
We have a lot in common, don't we?
We do. Well, I wasn't going to run for commissioner in 24.
I remember this because
you and I were talking at a golf course. Yeah.
Yes.
I do not like politics, which is strange for someone in elected office. I like getting stuff done. Mm-hmm. And in my prayer time, I really felt God saying to me, how obedient are you? And what kind
Don't you hate that question?
Well, what kind of community do you want to be in? And if you want change, if you want a community that loves each other, that helps everyone try to succeed, and champions godly principles, then are you willing to step up and be a voice for that? Or are you willing to take the easy road, the low-hanging fruit, and say, you know what? I've got a great career as a CFO of a big company. Yep. I'm making great money. I don't need this. Yep. However, I want to be obedient, and I look back, 2 years from now, and I'm like, thank you, God.
Yeah, same. Yeah. I think that all the time. I'm like, God, man, you were so right. You were born for just such a time as this, right? And I really feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be at the exact time I'm supposed to be here. And mark my word, Ron, the second I'm out here picking low-hanging fruit, it's time for me to hang up the microphone.
I say the same thing. And with that, we'll take our last break. You're listening to Commissioner's Corner. Welcome back to Commissioner's Corner. I am Ron Turpin, and I have my special guest here with us, Kayla Blakeslee. So we've been having some great conversations so far. I'm super enjoying this. Hopefully the listeners are as well.
Me too, and I didn't realize we had so much in common.
I know.
I'm impressed.
So you've interviewed a lot of folks. I mean, even on a weekly basis, you interview a ton of people. Is there a guest that you've ever had that you thought, wow, I can't believe that I get to do this?
First of all, there have been many, and they're not always the big national, headliner names, although I will say the biggest pinch me moment that I've had just came last fall when I got to interview Glenn Beck. And I know that seems like the easy answer, right? Of course she's going to pick Glenn Beck, but it's the reason why. There's a couple reasons, actually, that I would pick Glenn. First and foremost, I got to do it at our brand new studios on the other side of town.
Which are very nice, by the way.
They're very nice. And Ron, I had to pinch myself that morning. And Josh and I, my producer, I think we did a really good job of seizing that moment and taking that moment in. We looked around and we're like, this is the first time we were ever even in that space, which, first of all, shame on us. I can't believe we experimented in that studio, first and foremost, with Glenn Beck. But it was our first interview ever there. The first time I sat in that chair, the first time I spoke on that microphone. And I remember looking at Josh and being like, oh my gosh, and it's going to be with Glenn Beck. Like, that's just such a pinch me moment, first of all. So that's kind of one of the reasons why it was my favorite, biggest interview, because of the moment that it kind of marked in my trajectory of my career. But then, there's something special that comes with Glenn. First of all, Glenn is one of the OGs in this industry, right? Nobody tells a story like Glenn Beck. And speaking of him telling stories, going back to when Charlie Butcher died in the fall of 2018, I'll never forget the day after he died. Glenn Beck came on his nationally syndicated radio program and opened up with a monologue dedicated to Charlie Butcher. Wow. It stopped me dead in my tracks. I remember my general manager, I was in the newsroom at the time. He came in, bust the door open, and I'm like, shh, I'm listening, because he wanted to know if I'm hearing it. And he and I just stood there and sobbed. We hugged. I mean, Glenn's just telling the story of Charlie like they were best friends and talking about Fort Wayne. And I remember him saying there just must be something good in the water in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And he's like, and I want some of that, talking about Charlie. And I remember right then and there, I was, mark my words, if I ever meet Glenn, if I ever get to interview Glenn, I'm going to thank him publicly for taking the moment to recognize someone on a local scale. Again, he's got a nationally syndicated radio program. He can book the president for a guest, right? And he opens up about our Charlie Butcher and about Whoa and Fort Wayne and Northeast Indiana. So fast forward, last fall, I've got Glenn Beck in this brand new studio, which is already a pinch me moment. And I did what I said I was going to do. I publicly thanked him on the air for recognizing someone who was so special to me and to our community. And so for me, that will forever be my highlight guest, my highlight interview. I could interview the president, right, of the United States, and I don't think that interview would ever top that moment with Glenn Beck.
No, it's a great real story, right? Because most people would say, Mike Pence or Donald Trump or something
Roseanne
like that.
Barr. That one was a close second. Okay. We had to have the dump button ready for that one.
Oh, I bet you did. So,
but yes, you're right. That one was kind of goes back against something we said earlier in the show. it was personal.
Right.
It was very personal to me. And that's what made that interview so special and so memorable.
No, that's great. So I know your job and mine are ones that everyone wants just a piece of your time, right? And it is very easy in this community to do something every night. And I tell people all the time, I mean, my day normally starts before 7, and I usually don't get home most nights before 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And one of the things my wife always asks me, text me something, are we having dinner tonight or not? So I really, our kids are gone now, and they live down in Indianapolis, so we're empty nesters. So I really try to make importance to have time with my wife, So you have a husband, you have a young daughter. How do you try to balance all that so that they're a priority first, and then your faith, which the faith is the priority, then your family, then the job?
Yep.
How do you do that?
I don't. No. I try really hard. And again, I'm not saying I get it right every time, because I don't. But over the years, especially once our daughter was born, she's 5, she'll be 6 in June, I had to become really intentional with my time. And I had to learn that it was okay to set boundaries. I think that came back in this 2024 lighthouse moment that I had that I was talking about earlier. I was not very good at setting boundaries earlier on in my career. And maybe you can relate to this. You feel like you got to put forward that kind of hustle.
And you've got to say no sometimes.
And I didn't learn that lesson. It took me, again, I'm a slow learner, apparently. It took me a long time to learn that lesson. And I still feel bad to this day telling people, no, I can't speak at that, or no, I can't be there. I got a T-ball tournament, But at the end of the day, when you're kind of going back to those priorities.
You will never get that time back with your daughter.
I will never get that time back. And I've really had this mental shift shortly thereafter my daughter was born, that if God is going to entrust me with one of his angels, to entrust me with that baby girl, by golly, I better do an outstanding job raising her and raising her to be a spiritual warrior, right? And so I got to be present in order to do that. So now, I might feel bad that I can't attend your event or MC your function, but there's zero guilt for me.
No, we tell our friends all the time, and our kids are 24 and 26, and one of the things that we always say, our primary responsibility, it's not the titles of the jobs and the awards and all that. It is, did we raise our children to embrace God as their own?
Amen. And
to live a life of victory. And so far, knock on wood, they've done that. And so for us, everything else is secondary. And so, I applaud you for that, is that, especially your daughter seeing you and your husband as a strong unit, and that faith is a central part of that. We always, for us, having that strong church family was critical, that have other people that love on those kids, and show them Jesus as much as we did. And, it was one at times we were those parents that, no, you can't go to, Sally's house or Jimmy's house because we don't know their parents. And so, but we look back.
We're already approaching that territory, Ron.
And, we never regretted it, Kayla, because you know what? You cannot spare your children from everything. However, there are some things that, we can try to, shield them from heartache, and then show them a godly way to make decisions. And so, no, that's well done on that.
I always say I feel bad for our baby girl, because I work in the news. And so, unfortunately, I do hear, it's true, though, I hear the horror stories.
Right.
Little girls going to stay over at their friend's house, and their brothers, their uncles, their dad, they're horror stories. And so I've already kind of joked with our baby girl, I'm like, girl, you ain't ever going to sleep over at anyone's house. They can come here, maybe.
Well, that's what, imagine having 2 lawyers as parents.
Yeah,
and so
just as bad.
We told our kids, don't even try to argue. It's not going to work. So it's not going to happen. So switching topics real quick, you talk to a lot of elected officials.
Yeah.
And so in your opinion, we don't need to hear names, but what do you think makes a good elected official?
I would say a couple of things. First and foremost, integrity. Are they doing what they actually say they're going to do?
That's
right?
novel.
That's right. It is in this day and age. I'd say transparency is a big one. I feel like so many of our elected officials are not very transparent. Accessibility as well. Right. At the end of the day, you're a public servant and you are here to serve. And if I can't even access you, I know darn well, residents of Northeast Indiana are having a hard time accessing you as well. And I'd say just willingness to listen.
Right.
Ron, when you got elected, there was actually 2 people in 2024 that I looked in the face You were one of them, and I know you know this. And I said, I'm expecting great things from you.
Oh, don't set the bar too low,
nope,
Kayla. Jeez.
But that was one of my things with you. You are a really great listener. And I think that's what makes some lawmakers better than others, right? This willingness to listen. And I don't mean just listen to listen, but listen to actually hear voters and know their heartbeat, know what's on their mind, know what's impacting them. And I'll tell you, and I won't name names, but I mean, you can email me or text me or whatnot, right? If you want to. But
447-1190.
Yeah, there you go. Nailed it. We have a couple unicorns. We do have some really good eggs in our backyard. And sometimes I do wish listeners can see and hear some of the things that I see and hear. And even some of the text messages that I have with our elected leaders. And I'll share them with my husband. I'll be like, man, we're so fortunate. This is who is making choices that are grounded in faith. Yeah. Grounded in, what impacts Northeast Indiana first and foremost. So those are the good ones. The true listeners, transparency, accessibility, and, integrity. But that one's hard to come by.
No, that's great. So last question.
Oh, okay.
Is this kind of a bonus question?
Oh.
So you and I talked about a lot of topics over the last 15 months. Mm-hmm. Is there a question you've been dying to ask me that we're only going to talk, just between the two of us, we'll answer that question.
Okay. Well, first of all, this one's maybe kind of lame, but I've always wondered this because you just said it. You are up at the wee hours of the early morning, you're up late, you are holding 5,000, listening sessions, I feel like. You're constantly somewhere, doing something. How old are you? I've always wanted to know, how old are you, Commissioner? Because you've got more dang energy, than my 5-year-old. I'm like, how does he do it?
Well, I was so irritated. I told my kids, I went to get my hair cut the other day, and I don't have a lot of hair left, but I still need to get it cut periodically.
I see both
My
of them.
wife refuses to do it. So they gave me the senior discount. And I look up at the thing, and it's like 65. And I'm like, 65? I am 55.
You are 55.
So I just turned 55 earlier this year.
You don't look a day over 50.
Well,
so
thank
there you go.
I still have 2 grandmas living. A grandpa that passed away last year at 96. So knock on wood. And I remind people all the time, there is no retirement age in the Bible.
I like that.
Now,
I like that.
Now, the flip side of that is people in government that stay too long. Mm-hmm. And we all know people that, they outlived their shelf life a long time ago. Yeah. So I would, as you and I talked about settling, I would say, especially, I'll give you a challenge, Kayla. If you ever see me being one of those people that are just kind of mailing it home, you need to tell me.
I'll come nudge you. I'll say, hey, it's time to go 212, buddy.
My wife will do it way before that.
I'm sure. Can count on her. No, I have always wondered, man, how old he is. And again, I don't know if our listeners know this, but when you call into my show Tuesday mornings at 7:40 on Fort Wayne's Morning News, you are in the middle of a workout. You're usually like, you gotta get your water.
I just left my trainer by the time. Yeah.
I'm like, man, this guy is going full steam ahead, before 7 a.m.
Well, when I became commissioner, I decided to make some lifestyle changes. And so, as you know, like over the last, when I became commissioner, I've lost about 55 pounds so far. And, I've done it the old-fashioned way. I've got a trainer 3 days a week, and I'm dogmatic.
So you're not injecting yourself or doing anything, taking anything crazy.
Wrong with people to do that. It's just a matter, that's not me.
Yeah.
So we are, this time went by fast. I knew it would.
And can I just say, props to you, Commissioner, because you just came in here. You've not ever hosted a radio program that I'm aware of. And it takes some serious chops to be able to pull that off. And I have sat with many, let's call it newbies. Can I call you a newbie at it?
Oh,
right?
Absolutely a newbie.
I mean, I know you've had your podcast. Outstanding. Job well done. A+ in my book.
Well, team here is outstanding. So, they make it easy. This is when I first started talking about the concept, you were the guest I wanted to start with because help ease me into this as far as, and hopefully you, the listener, have gotten a kind of a little shot of what this show's going to be, that it really is a conversation that we want to have with different influencers throughout the community to talk about big topics that you're interested in. So, I've got next week kind of planned out already, and you definitely don't want to miss it. And we'll give some teasers, maybe next week on what that is. So, again, it's been a privilege to be with you for this last hour. I'm Commissioner Ron Turpin, and you have been listening to the first episode of Commissioner's Corner.